Discover 3 chilling true Airbnb horror stories that will haunt your solo night. Volume 2. Lucy had always heard the stories, the kind that made your skin crawl. That innocent-looking Airbnb you thought might serve as a cozy getaway? Yeah, it could turn into a heart-stopping nightmare at any moment. As a devoted mother, Lucy was about to step into a tale where comfort met horror, but she had no idea that it awaited her. The lavender sunset cast long shadows as she pulled into the driveway of a charming Victorian home, its paint peeling but spirit intact. An odd smell of cinnamon wafted through the air, wrapping around her as Tom, the host, greeted her with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Anxiety clawed at her chest as she glanced at Emily, her exhausted daughter, who was nodding off in the back seat. For a fleeting moment, Lucy felt a tug of relief. Everything looked peaceful enough. But soon enough, an undercurrent of dread whispered warnings she was reluctant to acknowledge. Once inside, the quaint decor felt strange, too familiar yet unsettling. The creaking floorboards sang a ghostly tune as Lucy guided Emily up the staircase, her footsteps punctuated by eerie echoes. They settled in, and for an instant all seemed well, but then the shadows began to stretch, long and dark, consuming the corners of the room. Lucy's heart raced as she caught sight of a family portrait hanging in the foyer. A smiling little girl with familiar features froze her mid-breath. Fear slithered up her spine. It looked exactly like Emily. She shook her head, dismissing the wild thoughts that clawed at her sanity. The first flicker of power unsettlingly flashed through the room. Then darkness enveloped her like a thick fog. She fumbled for her cell phone, only to find that there was no signal. They dropped it just like that. One moment she felt the comfort of technology, and the next she was cut off from the world. Panic surged in her chest as she dialed for help, only for a voice on the other end to pierce through her panic. "Hello? Maplewood Police. This is Tom." The air thickened around her as realization dawned with a bone-chilling grip. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." She stepped gingerly into the hallway, the shadows seeming to breathe. Outside, the peaceful facade of Maplewood twisted. The streetlights flared like watchful eyes presiding over deep secrets. Every creak and rustle echoed like whispers, urging her to flee, but terror chained her in place. The neighbor's house appeared ominous, its windows dark like the void, ready to swallow her whole. In that moment, the door swung closed behind her, locking her in with a lurking threat. Fear gripped her as she stood at the precipice between the known and the unknown. What was awaiting her behind the corners dimmed by dread? Lucy's heart thundered like a drum in her ears, every beat a reminder that her fight against whatever evil dwelled in this house was just beginning. The sinister truth began to unravel, but not without revealing something much darker than she had ever anticipated. Something that echoed through the tales whispered late at night. What came next? She could only brace herself against the storm of her deepest fears. Lucy's breath trembled in her throat as she pressed her back against the cold wall. The chill ran deeper than the temperature. It seeped into her bones, her resolve. Shadows danced mockingly around her, and as the only source of light flickered dimly, she felt the grip of dread tighten. The walls whispered secrets, taunting her with muted murmurs, or were they echoes of something lost? "Mommy!" Emily's soft voice pulled her from the swirling fog of terror. The girl stood at the end of the hallway, her outline just a sliver in the gloom. "Can I have a cookie?" She shifted from one small foot to the other, irritation sleeping over her face as if she sensed her mother's fear. Lucy forced a smile, willing herself to be strong. "Sure, honey, I'll get some for you." As she started to munch backward towards the kitchen, her heart sank when she approached the family portrait again. The eyes of that girl, hers, the joy frozen on canvas. It felt like a gaze from a prisoner long gone, an echo from another time, chilling her like an icy gust. The thought twisted uneasily in her mind. What had she stumbled upon? Rushing into the kitchen, she grabbed the cookies from a porcelain plate. The sweet smell of cinnamon masked something rotten underneath, sending her stomach churning. She turned around and found Emily still there, staring at the portrait with an intensity that made the hairs on the back of Lucy's neck stand up. "Emily,
"Come on," Lucy snapped, her voice sharper than intended. The little girl blinked and refocused, brushing off her mother's tone. "Can we sleep in the other room?" Confusion settled over Lucy as she marched back towards Emily. "Why? This place is fine." But she felt her own unease reflected in the girl's wide eyes. With a sigh, she ran her fingers through her hair, trying to shake off the feeling. Let's look for a different room, okay?" They tiptoed into the neighboring bedroom, and as Lucy turned on the lamp, the room erupted with shadows. Something whipped past the window, catching her breath. She felt the air shift, like a presence had slipped in uninvited.
This room, too, was filled with remnants of the past. Dusty dolls languished in the corners, silently judging her every movement. It made her want to scream. Instead, she steeled herself. "Emily, stay close," she urged, cautiously stepping deeper inside. But her daughter was drawn to an old rocking chair that creaked almost with the intent of speaking. Surrendering herself to the inevitable fear, she moved towards it, drawn like a moth to the flame. "Look, Mommy!" Emily exclaimed, pointing. Squinting, Lucy followed her finger to see a shadow swoop down, flickering at the edge of the room. It felt alive. Then, without warning, the door slammed shut behind them, locking tight with a booming crack. Heart racing, Lucy lunged for the handle, wrenching it desperately as Emily's screams pierced the air like shards of glass. Darkness flooded the room, shadows swirling faster now. "Mommy!" "Emily, don't let go of me," Lucy shouted into the growing void. She clawed towards her daughter's cries, but the figures in the shadow twisted and turned, chasing them with cold, clammy hands that seemed just out of reach. A weight pressed down on her chest, constricting, squeezing her breath. The mist coiled thicker. It felt like it was pulling her away. The cries faded into echoes, each sound lost and deeper in the void. Lucy gritted her teeth, forcing her way back to the door, just as something icy touched her neck, sending a jolt of terror through her veins. She couldn't let this be the end. Behind her, a sinister voice echoed from the shadows, soft yet sharp. "You're mine now." Lucy spun around, her eyes wide with panic. As she faced the darkness, every bone in her body reacted, ready to fight. That's when she noticed the flickering light of her cell phone on the floor by the door. Sprinting towards it, she knew that if she could just reach it, she could. But something cold and brutal gripped her ankle, pulling her back. The darkness threatened to engulf her completely. Just before her vision faded to black, she heard Emily's small voice, faint but oddly comforting. "Mommy, I'm coming." What had they awoken in this house? What was about to unfold as her daughter's presence surged against that oncoming darkness? Lucy's heart pounded faster as she felt the entity's grip tightening. Was there a way out, or had they both walked straight into a living nightmare? Lucy twisted, her resolve flickering like the dying light of the lamp, which sputtered and dimmed. She imagined her daughter's small hand reaching for her, but all she felt was an empty void where Emily should have been. She couldn't let fear separate them. With a guttural cry, Lucy rolled to her side, and the grip on her ankle unwound just long enough for her to claw towards the door. The chilly air seeped through the cracks, biting into her skin as she groped for the handle. It felt solid, impossibly heavy, as if the house itself resisted her escape. "Please," she begged, bile rising in her throat. "Let us out!" A terrible silence followed, a pregnant pause where even the shadows seemed to hesitate. Lucy's heart raced, expectations spinning in her head like a tornado. She threw herself against the door. It budged, just slightly, but the icy hand was back. "Help!" Emily's voice wavered, growing fainter, drawing Lucy into a deeper dread. Every heartbeat became a drum of urgency. She steeled herself and pushed again, her body pounding against the wood. With a splintering crack that resonated through the room, the door swung open. Light flooded in, illuminating the space before her, swallowing the darkness. Then she saw it, a figure in the corner, the shadowed outline of what once looked like a child, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger that sent shivers coursing down her spine. Her body froze, caught in a breathless moment, as realization hit. It wasn't Emily. "Mommy," it rasped, the voice twisted, as if echoing from another dimension. It was a sick mockery of her daughter's tone, and Lucy felt her blood run cold.
away from her!" she shouted, bracing herself against the wall, trying not to break eye contact. The creature stepped forward, its limbs elongated and ghastly, a creeping horror that exuded darkness. Lucy backed into the hallway, searching for her daughter. Fear clawed at her as Emily's cries echoed, unseen. The creature laughed, a sound that echoed around her, filling the air with promises of doom. Without thinking, Lucy lunged back toward the kitchen, desperate for anything that could be a weapon. A knife gleamed on the counter, stark against the chaotic mess of dinner remnants. She gripped the handle, feeling the cool metal in contrast to the heat of her terror. Emily's cries grew louder, pulling Lucy out of her thoughts. "Mommy, help!" She rushed back into the shadows, the knife raised as she squinted into the creeping darkness. "Emily, where are you?" The air thickened with something foul. She could almost taste despair on her tongue. It filled her with primal fear, a warning that the walls were closing in, trapping her in a nightmare. Suddenly, a finger of darkness shot out, swiping at her, brushing her arm with icy breath. She gasped, tears stinging her eyes. "Emily, please!" The wail that followed shattered her resolve, the sound a haunting blend of a child's terror and something much older and much darker.
Lucy's chest constricted tight, choking back the scream that wanted to spill from her lips. There it was, down the hall, a sliver of light flickering through another door. A chance, a way out. Summoning everything she had left, she dashed for it, the knife clutched tightly in her fist. Who or what was coming for her and her daughter now? Was she running towards salvation, or deeper into the clutches of terror? As she flung open the door, the light burst forth, revealing shadows darting around her. In that split second, a pair of burning eyes locked onto hers from the darkness, a chilling reminder that it wasn't just Emily she was trying to save. And as that entity lunged towards her, Lucy realized in horror, not all shadows were bound to the darkness. Some crept in plain sight. What waited on the other side of the door could determine their fate forever. Would they find safety, or erode completely into the night? Lucy stumbled through the doorway, her heart pounding like a war drum. The light was blinding, but it was the shadows that clawed at her mind. She noticed the room had a low ceiling, and the walls were painted in peeling, faded colors, creating a claustrophobic atmosphere that suffocated her with every breath. "Emily!" Her voice broke, echoing off the damp walls as she strained to hear even the slightest murmur of her daughter's presence. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up, awareness prickling at her skin. The feeling of being watched, of being hunted, tightened around her like a noose. She turned slowly, the knife gripped tightly in her shaking hand. "Where are you?" The question hung in the air, thick and oppressive. Every second stretched long, filled only with the treacherous silence that followed. Suddenly, a faint rustle caught her ear from the far corner of the room. Lucy whipped around, eyes wide, knife raised high. An empty closet sat ajar, its door creaking as if beckoning her. She dared a step closer, a rush of dread coiling in her stomach. It could be Emily, or it could be something else, a trap set by the very darkness that tormented them. "Mommy!" A soft whimper emerged, breaking through the terrifying stillness. Lucy's breath hitched in her throat, hope swelling like a wave, only to crash violently as she realized the familiar voice was laced with fear. With agile steps, she glided toward the closet. The air felt heavier, an indescribable weight pressing against her chest. As she reached the door, an icy gust blew past her face, tugging at her clothes, whispering cruel secrets of despair. Lucy steadied her hand, fear contorting her features, and pulled the door wide open. Darkness spilled out like ink, wrapping around her as she squinted into the shadows. "Emily!" The name came out choked, the sound barely registering against the growing dread in her veins. She blinked, searching the depths of the closet, before finally catching sight of a small figure huddled in the corner, trembling in the gloom. "Mommy!" Emily lunged out, her small body colliding against Lucy with a force that nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. Relief flooded through Lucy, but it was short-lived. Panic surged back as she noticed the strange discoloration on Emily's arm, a dark bruise with a twisted shape etched into her skin. "What happened?" Lucy's voice was barely a whisper, feeling the weight of the universe press down on her as she scanned Emily for any more signs of harm. "I don't know," Emily sobbed, her eyes wide with fear. "It's coming, Mommy! It wants to take me away!" The sound of a low growl rippled through the air.
The creature's laughter echoed from the shadows outside the closet, taunting them, feasting on their terror. Lucy felt bile rise into her throat as she turned slowly, the knife shaking in her grip. "Stay behind me," she urged, her voice an effort. The knife felt useless in this oppressive fear, but she couldn't show weakness. Not now. They backed out of the closet, eyes scanning frantically for an escape route. The room had transformed, walls seemingly closing in with each breath. Emily clutched Lucy's leg, her small frame trembling. Where could they run? Then she spotted it. A window at the far end of the room, barely ajar, with moonlight spilling through, promising freedom. Her heart raced with renewed hope, but the growling intensified, a low rumble that vibrated beneath her skin. "Lucy," Emily whimpered, and at that moment the shadows coalesced, forming into a monstrous visage, the twisted figure of the creature lurking just outside the light. Eyes glinted with malicious delight, and it stepped forward, eager to close the distance. "Run!" Lucy cried, propelling her daughter towards the window with a surge of desperation. But her body wouldn't move. She was frozen, caught in the gaze of that hungry beast, an unearthly desire consuming all reason. With renewed strength, Lucy lunged, grabbing Emily's hand tightly, adrenaline fueling her resurgence as she darted toward the window. The blinds rattled against the frame, a cacophony of noise competing with the growling that surrounded them. "Mommy, hurry!" Emily shouted, terror piercing the dark. But just as they reached the window, a scalding breath wafted over them, and the creature surged forward. Lucy knew they had only moments to decide. The appendages of the creature reached for them, whispering promises woven with deceit. Could they leap from the window and risk everything for freedom, or would they be trapped in this nightmare forever? Lucy turned to Emily, eyes locking in a desperate moment of silent understanding. Whatever lay outside could either save them or doom them to darkness for eternity. With a final scream echoing in the abyss, the choice loomed heavy. Would they plunge into the uncertain night outside, or surrender to the shadow that craved them?
Lucy's heart raced as she reached for the window, the cool glass beneath her fingers a brief solace from the icy grip of dread. Outside, the moon hung low, but its light felt distant, a fleeting promise of safety that was hard to trust. With tremors coursing through her body, she could sense the creature behind them, its presence a malignant shadow creeping closer. "Hold my hand tight, Emily," she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily nodded, her tiny fingers trembling in Lucy's grasp, each heartbeat echoing the desperation of their situation. A thunderous crash split the air, making Lucy flinch as the closet door slammed shut. The growling intensified, a voracious rumble that resonated deep within her bones. The creature closed in, clawed hands reaching for them, hungry for the fear it fed on. Adrenaline surged within her. She couldn't hesitate any longer. "Now," Lucy shouted. They jumped through the window, arms entwined, a leap born from primal instinct. The gut-wrenching feeling of falling consumed her, and for a moment there was a blissful weightlessness before the hard ground rushed up to meet them. They landed roughly, the cold earth biting at their legs. Lucy felt a jolt of pain shoot through her body, but she pushed it aside. She sat up, gasping for breath, heart hammering against her ribs. "Emily," she called, frantically scanning the dimly lit surroundings. Emily moaned, crumpled beside her, face pale and ashen. Lucy reached out, brushing her daughter's hair from her sweaty forehead. "Are you okay?" she asked, terror prickling at her insides. "I think so," Emily replied, voice shaky. But as they huddled together in the shadows, the darkness behind them shifted, no longer confounded by walls. The creature's growl snaked through the air, echoing like thunder as it surged toward them, embracing the night. "Run," Lucy urged, pulling Emily to her feet. They dashed away from the house, each step fueled by raw panic. Adrenaline coursed through Lucy as they raced into the overgrown field, the tall grass whispering ominously against their skin. Anxiety gnawed at their heels, as if the shadows themselves were pursuing them. "Where do we go?" Emily panted, terrified eyes darting around. "Anywhere but here," Lucy replied, sprinting towards the tree line that loomed in the distance, a sheltering darkness amidst the creeping dread. The growl intensified behind them, a deafening promise that they were not yet free. Trees loomed like sentinels,
their gnarled branches stretching outward as they entered the dense woodland. The air chilled, each breath becoming more gauzy and labored. The profound silence pressed down like a weight, each rustle in the underbrush setting their nerves on fire. "Keep going," Lucy urged, dragging Emily forward. Suddenly, a twig snapped loudly behind them. Lucy's heart dropped as she felt the presence return, a palpable force swelling just outside the reach of their vision.
"Mommy?" Emily whimpered, her voice barely a murmur, laced with sheer terror. "Stay close!" Lucy exclaimed, spinning around, the knife still clenched tightly in her grasp. In the dim light, she could just make out a figure, its grotesque form weaving between the trees, shifting with unnatural ease, hunger radiating from its being. With striking speed, it lunged at them, jaws snapping wildly, saliva dripping like streams of venom. Lucy instinctively positioned herself in front of Emily, instinctual protection overriding fear. "Don't look at it!" she shouted, even as her resolve trembled at the edges. The creature's eyes, cold and malicious, locked onto Lucy, piercing her stillness. It stalked closer, each step deliberate, each growl vibrating through the air like a death knell. The darkness closed in, the underbrush closing around them, leaving no route of escape in sight. "Lucy! Mommy, help!" Emily cried out, her small voice breaking through the noise, fracturing Lucy's resolve and sinking deeper into despair. Would they find a way to escape the nightmare they had run into, or would the shadows consume them, their cries lost in the depths of the woods? Lucy's mind raced, piecing together fragments of possibility, desperate for an escape route. The creature edged closer, its stench a vile mix of rot and earth, stirring her instincts into a frenzy. "We can't stay here," she thought, adrenaline coursing through her like fire. She glanced behind. The creature paused, rearing back as if calculating its next move. The darkness around it coiled like smoke, a living entity hungry for the warmth of them. "This way!" Lucy shouted, yanking Emily's hand as she darted deeper into the trees. Branches clawed at them, razor-sharp fingers tearing through the air, while Lucy pulled Emily through the thicket. "Keep your head down," she yelled, not daring to look back. The growls changed pitch, a low rumble of frustration that vibrated through the ground. They were close, so close. "Mommy, I can't!" Emily cried, her feet stumbling, fatigue snaking through her limbs. Lucy turned to see her daughter's face twisted in fear, the innocence of childhood shattered beneath the weight of the terror that stalked them. "Hold on, sweetie," she coaxed, pushing them forward. They broke into a clearing, the moon's light illuminating a small, twisted cabin in the distance, a remnant of desolation and despair, the perfect juxtaposition of hope and horror. "We can hide in there," Lucy urged, heart pounding as they dashed toward the abandoned structure. The door hung ajar, creaking ominously as she shoved it open, pulling Emily inside. The stark air inside was heavy with dust and neglect, but it felt safer than the claustrophobic woods outside. Lucy quickly scanned the place, a single room, rotting wood, a shattered window revealing the moonlit sky. "Emily, stay close," she whispered, glancing once more at the doorway, holding her breath, straining to hear the creature's claws scraping against the ground. It was quiet, too quiet. Emily crouched low by an old table, hugging her knees. Lucy moved to the window, peering out into the darkness, the trees swallowing everything whole. "Please, let it not find us," she murmured, but then she heard it, a low growl, unmistakably closer now. Panic struck like lightning. She turned to Emily, but her daughter was already looking past her, eyes wide in horror. "Mommy," Emily whispered, voice trembling, pointing toward the far corner of the cabin. Lucy's heart sank as she followed her gaze. There it was, a lurching figure, its eyes shining like embers in the dust-choked darkness. The creature pressed itself against the wall, a grotesque mockery of human form, distorted by an unspeakable horror. It stared, lips curling into a sinister smile, teeth like jagged shards, dripping with some foul liquid. "Get back!" Lucy shouted, instinctively raising the knife, breath quickening. She felt every heartbeat in her ears, the rustle of leaves outside amplifying the tension. "We need to run, now!" But Emily was frozen, rooted in fear, eyes locked onto the creature's gaze. Dark tendrils of dread reached out to ensnare Lucy's resolve. "Emily!" she cried, urgency lacing her voice. The creature took a shoveling step forward, its movements almost hypnotic, pulling both mother and daughter into a stare that felt like a black hole, ready to swallow them whole. Look away!
Lucy screamed at Emily, stepping between her and the creature, her body trembling. Emily blinked, breaking the spell, but it was too late. The creature lunged, a flash of motion that shattered the stillness like glass, its growl becoming a roar that filled the cabin. "Run!" Lucy yelled, propelling Emily toward the back of the cabin. They had to escape, they had to, but the door slammed shut, rattling on its hinges, and a dark laugh echoed through the room, sending freezing tendrils of terror through Lucy's spine. What now? Lucy thought frantically. How could they possibly escape when the shadows clung to them, and the night itself seemed to come alive? "Mommy!" Emily cried, and as she turned back to comfort her, the horrifying truth dawned on them. The windows, their last hope to the outside world, were barred over with rusted metal. Trapped. As darkness pressed in, the creature's laughter bounced off the walls. They were not just cornered, they were now prey. It was not the end, it was only the beginning of their nightmare. And then the lights flickered, and the earth underfoot trembled. What new terror awaited them? The flickering lights cast grotesque shadows on the walls, stretching and bending like the limbs of the creature lurching in the corner. Lucy's heart raced as if trying to escape her chest. She squeezed the knife tightly, the cold metal grounding her in the chaos. "We have to find a way out,"
she gasped, glancing around the dim cabin for something, anything that could help them. Emily clung to her, eyes wide with fear. The creature's guttural growl rumbled again, the sound echoing around them, rattling the dust that lingered in the air. It was moving closer, shuffling on its claw-like feet, a dark mass leaning impossibly against the cabin's far wall. "Keep quiet," Lucy whispered to Emily, desperation tightening her throat. The furniture loomed around them, each piece a potential shield or obstacle, but nothing felt safe anymore. The lights flickered again, and for a fraction of a second, they illuminated a shelf filled with shattered jars, remnants of long-forgotten lives. Lucy darted to it, her fingers scrambled over the debris. A long, jagged shard glinted among the wreckage. It could be a weapon. "Stay back, Emily," she hissed, grabbing the shard and positioning herself between her daughter and the creature. It grinned wider, revealing rows of teeth that glistened in an unholy array. With each step, it crawled forward in a jerky, unnatural motion, a grotesque puppet strung by twisted wires. The walls seemed to close in, the air heavy with dread. "Find a way out," Lucy whispered to herself, scanning the cabin. The single window, barred shut, felt like a taunted escape rather than a door to freedom. She turned to the door. It was worn and ancient, but maybe the hinges could be forced. The creature lunged, a blur of dark energy, teeth snapping as it leaped toward them. Lucy barely dodged, adrenaline screaming through her veins. "Emily, go!" she shouted, not waiting for her daughter to respond. She rushed toward the door, dragging Emily with her, slamming her body against the wooden barrier. It barely budged. With a thunderous growl, the creature tackled them from behind, sending Lucy sprawling forward. Emily screamed, a sound that clawed its way through Lucy's panic. "Get back!" Lucy shouted, instinct driving her to push herself up, swinging the shard at the beast. The glass shattered against the creature's arm with a sickening crunch. Black bile oozed where it struck, but the creature simply laughed, a wet, gurgling sound that filled the room with despair. "Mommy!" Emily shrieked, paralyzed by fear. "Mommy, Lucy's voice broke. Before she could finish, a bone-chilling noise echoed, a grinding sound that pierced the air as the walls began to tremble. The very structure of the cabin felt alive, alive with the intention of trapping them. A dark pulse throbbed from the corners, creeping closer. Lucy's breath hitched, and for a moment, hope flickered within her, a final, desperate idea. She dashed for the window, examining the bars, wondering if there was any way to break free. "Look for something," she yelled, pushing Emily down toward the floor. "Anything to help." But instead, what Emily found was far worse. In the shadows beneath the table, she trembled as she touched something cold and wet. Her fingers recoiled, and she yelped, "Mommy!" The creature sensed her fear, shifting its gaze from Lucy to Emily, its smile widening into something grotesque. The air turned frigid, as if the cabin itself exhaled a breath of ancient curses. "Get away from her!" Lucy screamed, charging at the beast as terror bled into rage. The lights flickered violently, casting shadows that morphed into crawling figures. A vision of horror that signaled the darkness deep inside the cabin was not just of the physical realm. Just as Lucy reached for the creature, the ground beneath her began to crack, the space around them warping. A pulsing blackness emerged, and Lucy realized with dread,
Escape was futile if they couldn't understand the real power of their nightmare. As the creature lunged again, teeth gleaming, the last thing Lucy noticed was the door behind Emily, a sliver of darkness beckoning her into the abyss. Would it lead to their salvation or their doom? Whatever lay beyond, it was calling to them, urging them to take the leap. The floorboards shuddered, and with a final ear-splitting howl, the shadows surged. Where would they end up? The darkness roared around them as the shadows engulfed the cabin. Lucy felt a lurch at her stomach like being dragged into a pit of deepest night. The crack in the floor widened, a gaping maw that threatened to swallow them whole. "Mommy, help!" Emily's voice pierced through the cacophony of terror. Lucy turned on her heels, adrenaline fueling her every move. She had to save Emily. There was no other thought in her mind. The creature loomed closer, its laughter reverberating like a death knell. A foul odor filled the room, sharp and acrid, making Lucy's throat constrict. She took a step backward, feeling the jagged edge of the shard biting into her palm, but that palpable reality kept her anchored. "Emily, hold on to me," Lucy shouted, extending her free hand as she shouldered her way toward her daughter, dodging the creature's snapping jaws. She could see it now, the torn flesh and matted hair scattered across its hideous body, like a grotesque parody of what was once human. The walls echoed with the beast's menacing growls, surrounding them with sound. Lucy's breath came fast and shallow, but she couldn't think about the suffocating panic. She had to focus. "Mommy, we're going to die," Emily wailed, her small body trembling. "No, not yet," Lucy replied, a note of defiance creeping into her voice as she turned abruptly, searching their surroundings. She spotted the half-open door behind Emily, a sliver of uncertain hope. If they could just reach it. The creature was weaving back, wary of its own proximity to the crack in the ground. It might be vulnerable, but they had to act fast. "Listen to me, Emily," Lucy demanded, determination coursing through her. "When I say go, you run for the door. I'll handle it. Can you do that?" Emily nodded, but fear kept her rooted.
The floor trembled again, and a wave of dark energy surged past them, pushing Lucy closer to the edge of madness. She could sense the creature's hunger, its anticipation of their demise, and she refused to give it the satisfaction. "Go!" she shouted, and before she could second-guess herself, Lucy lunged forward, adding every ounce of fury into a swing at the beast with the shard. The glass met its leg, splintering with a loud crack that echoed through the cabin. Searing pain shot through the creature. It roared, a sound so inhuman it vibrated through Lucy's bones. "Run, Emily!" Lucy bellowed again, fear stripping her voice of any hesitation. Emily charged toward the door, her little feet pounding on the wood. Lucy knew instinctively that she had to hold it at bay, buying her daughter precious time. The flickering lights above illuminated them both for just a moment in stark relief. The creature spun, its eyes glimmering with a cruel light, focusing on Emily as Lucy stood her ground. Panic surged through her, an electric pulse that filled the room as she thrust the shard one last time into the creature's snarling mouth. The impact jolted Lucy backward. She stumbled, falling just as the ground split apart more savagely. "Mommy!" Emily screamed, darting back toward Lucy, her own fear now mixing with resolve. "No!" Lucy shouted, panic clawing at her throat. "Go!" But it was too late. The cabin trembled, the very structure screaming in protest to the madness erupting inside. The walls pulsated, and shadows began creeping up Lucy's legs, pulling her down. In a sudden, desperate motion, she grasped the doorframe, narrowly escaping the grasp of the dark abyss trying to consume her. "Emily!" she yelled again, barely processing how close she was to losing it all. But the door hovered before them, temptation taunting her despite its terrifying unknown. "Mommy!" Emily reached through the small crack in the door, panic lacing her voice. Together they faced utter chaos, but Lucy knew the dread they felt was just a whisper of the true horror awaiting them should they stay. And then, as the last flicker of light blinked out, a single whisper floated through the air, brushing against Lucy's ear, a sinister promise wrapped in warm breath. "Join me." What lay beyond that door? Would their fate intertwine with the darkness, or was there a way to escape this nightmare? The door seemed to pulse, as if alive, calling out to Emily and Lucy with a siren song. As darkness encroached, it felt like a gateway to another world, a world steeped in blood and suffering. Lucy's heart raced, contemplating the decision hanging heavy between them. She had to act,
to choose. "Emily, now! Run!" she screamed, forcing herself to sound stronger than she felt. The creature snarled, its jagged teeth glinting in the flickering light, a predator poised for a feast. With the last vestiges of her strength, Lucy shoved Emily forward, adrenaline surging. "Go!"
Emily's tiny hands gripped the doorframe, her wide eyes flooded with fear. She hesitated, torn between instinct and loyalty. "Mommy, I can't leave you," her voice cracked, a thin thread of desperation that tugged at Lucy's soul. "Do it, please," Lucy begged, her own heart breaking as she faced the creature, feeling its hot breath against her skin, rancid and putrid. With one last frantic glance, Emily darted toward the doorway. Lucy's vision blurred as she turned to confront the beast, forcing her mind to focus. The creature seethed, its eyes blazing with fury, but Lucy remained unyielding. She darted to the left, desperately trying to distract it. "Over here!" Lucy shouted, waving the shard like a banner of defiance. She hoped to draw its attention away from the door as Emily slipped through. The creature lunged, quick as lightning. Lucy barely dodged its grasp, rolling across the cracked floor as the beast exploded into rage. It pounded the ground, sending vibrations through Lucy's bones, the pulse of fear matching the cadence of the rumbling wood. Breathless, she scrambled back to her feet. "Emily!" she cried, needing to make sure her daughter made it out. But the cabin echoed with chaotic sounds, walls creaking and the beast's roar clamoring for her blood. A sinister growl rattled her bones as it pivoted to her, rage emanating from its dirty, gnarled form. Shadows clawed at Lucy's legs, tightening like a noose. She could feel the dread curling around her heart. The cabin's darkness was more than just shadows. It was an entity, insatiable and vicious. Desperation ignited within Lucy. She charged forward, wielding the shard with determination, aiming for the creature's eyes. She lunged, almost tripping over her own feet, adrenaline coursing through her. The shard connected with a sickening squelch. The creature howled, violently thrashing its massive body. Lucy withdrew, heart hammering, as she watched it stagger back, blood seeping from the wound, dark and oily like ink spilling into water. Just then, a faint, flickering light shone from the doorway. "Mommy!" Emily's voice beckoned like an angel amidst chaos. Lucy turned and saw her daughter, tears streaming down Emily's face, but her tiny body still standing resolutely in the doorway. "Come on!" Lucy shouted, but as she moved toward Emily, the ground split wider. Dark tendrils lashed out, eager to pull her down into the abyss below. Lucy stumbled, clawing to stay upright. "Emily, you can't come back! You have to go!" "No!" Emily cried out, and in that moment, Lucy felt the weight of the world bearing down on her. A choice had to be made. Would she abandon her child to save herself? Emily's silhouette flickered in the doorway, the light casting a hazy glow that felt both inviting and malevolent. "Mommy!" Emily's voice faded, becoming less distinct, overshadowed by the creature's wrath. Lucy knew she couldn't lose her daughter.
The beast lunged again, and Lucy, with every ounce of determination left inside her, rushed toward Emily, hoping for one last grasp at salvation. With one final scream, just as the creature leaped, Lucy reached for her daughter, their fingers almost touching, hope flickering in the darkness. Would they escape together, or would darkness consume them both? The choice loomed, each heartbeat a countdown to terror, each breath a plea for life. What lay beyond would decide their fate forever. Lucy felt the cold touch of despair as she dove towards Emily, heart racing like a wild drum in her chest. The creature's growl echoed in her ears, a sinister promise of doom that threatened to swallow them whole. She had to reach her daughter. That was all that mattered now. "Emily!" she shouted, fingers stretching desperately, praying, willing their hands to meet. In that instant, time seemed to warp. The air thickened, the shadows swirled anxiously, and the malevolent creature lunged again. She could feel the darkness attempting to wrap around there, dragging at her resolve, clawing at her very soul. And then, in the midst of chaos, an unimaginable strength surged through her. With a primal scream, she leaped forward, feeling every muscle in her body strain with the effort. Just when her fingertips grazed Emily's, a blinding light pierced through the darkness, a shimmer of hope illuminating the cabin. In that moment, Lucy seized it. "Grab my hand, Emily, now!" she howled, adrenaline burning in her veins. Emily, still rooted in fear, stared wide-eyed at her mother, confusion and terror gripping her small features.
But as that creature lunged yet again, a spark ignited in the little girl's eyes, a flicker of fight. "Mommy!" Emily's voice rose in determination. "I'm coming!" With ferocity that made Lucy's heart swell with pride, Emily reached forward, their hands clasped in an iron grip, a lifeline tethering them in a storm. The world spun as the shadows clawed at Lucy's ankles, pulling her back into the void. The creature snarled, a thunderous roar vibrating through the air, ready to claim them both. But Lucy wouldn't allow it. Not today, not ever. "Hold on," she screamed, planting her feet firmly on the ground, channeling every ounce of hope she possessed. The grip of darkness was relentless, cold and seeping, but it did not stand a chance against the fierce love that coursed through her. Together, they yanked against the pull of shadows, and suddenly the blinding light consumed them. The creature's wail drowned in the brilliance as Lucy and Emily were catapulted forward, bursting through the barrier between their nightmare and the real world. With a shushing rush, they tumbled into an open field beyond the cabin, a space alive with moonlight and fresh air. Lucy gasped, coughing out the stale dread, her body trembling violently. They rolled into the soft grass, the threat of dark shadows fading into whispers as they clung to each other. "Mommy!"
"Emily!" gasped, breathless but safe. Lucy pulled her daughter close, rocking back and forth, relief flooding through her limbs like a warm tide. "We made it," she murmured, fingers threading through Emily's hair. "We made it." But lingering behind them was the echo of darkness, the cabin shivering in the shadows of the trees, a reminder of what they had just escaped. "Can we go home now?" Emily whispered, her eyes darting fearfully towards the woods. "Yes, sweetheart," Lucy replied, wiping her tears away. "We're going home." As they stood up, the breath of freedom felt heavy yet liberating, settling into their souls. Lucy turned, one last glance to the ominous cabin, knowing the shadows inside would remain hungry, prowling for their next victim. Together, hand in hand, they walked away, stepping into the warmth of dawn that broke over the horizon. The lavender sky washed the world in reassurance, a world bathed in rebirth. As the first rays of sun kissed her skin, Lucy whispered a silent vow to herself. Never again would she let fear dictate her steps. They would thrive, not just survive. They would find joy, and no shadow could touch the light they carried inside. And with renewed strength, they headed home, embracing the promise of tomorrow's adventures. Before we wrap this up, I need you to do something big. If you enjoy these spine-chilling stories and want more, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive tale. Smash that like button right now to show your support and help us feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And listen up, this is urgent. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans know how important it is to show your love in this way.